To see you all. Thank you all for coming. My name is Moshe Feber. I'm the organizer, producer for this CloudDay, the cloud security event for the CYBERWEEK. Those of you who are coming in, please find yourself, I think you find more seats on the right side of the conference room. Actually, this is a great landmark for me, because about 6 or 7 years ago, when I started working with cloud computing, I had my own workloads moved to the cloud, and I understand the value of the cloud. When I came over and I tried to preach it to everybody, and I tried to preach it to, for instance, banks, they would look at me like, okay, you went berserk. I mean, banks in the cloud. About 6 or 7 years ago, this sounds like a joke. And luckily, things have changed. I've been watching this industry move forward in the last couple of years, helping it to move forward. And until we got to this day, I mean, an entire day dedicated to cloud for this financial sector. We're going to have banks talking about their cloud journey. We're going to have regulators talking about their cloud challenges, how they view the cloud. This is actually the agenda. So we're going to have regulators speaking about how they really view cloud computing. Is that an opportunity? What is the challenges in that opportunity? We're going to have later on the providers, the guys that build the cloud services, build the fintech services and selling it to banks. They're going to talk about the challenges for selling cloud services to the financial sector, how they deal with regulations, what things they have to do in order to cope with this actually really strict sector. And then, after break, we're going to talk to the bankers themselves and see how they deal with their cloud journey, how they deal with regulation, cross-border data transfer, all the challenges that they meet in their daily lives. So I'm not going to talk very long. I basically want to thank everybody that brought us here, which is basically the first line and some additional. Ilana from Tel Aviv University and the entire team. And actually, I'm going to thank all the speakers together instead of starting naming them. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining us. And lastly, I want to introduce the moderator for the next session. The next session will be the regulator session, and the moderator will be Dr. Hing-Yang Lee, who is currently the manager of Cloud Security Alliance in Asia Pacific, and formerly he built a cloud program for the Singapore government. Dr. Lee, can you come on stage, please? Welcome.
Good afternoon. So as Moshe has mentioned, I'm now with the Cloud Security Alliance in APAC. For 9.5 years, I was working with the Singapore government as head of its National Cloud Computing Office. As part of my job, I work closely with industry to promote the adoption of cloud computing. And along the way, I also have to spend time with the regulators in the F, G, and H sector. F for financial, G for government, and H for healthcare. So I hope to bring to bear some of this experience in dealing with the regulators in this afternoon's discussion. Today, for our panel discussion, we have 4 very distinguished, knowledgeable people in the areas of policy and regulations from different sectors, the financial as well as the government sectors. So without further ado, let me request one of them to come out one by one, to spend about 8 minutes to introduce themselves and then make a presentation of where they see the cloud is going before we embark upon a panel discussion. So may I have Rachel to come up first? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll manage. Okay, so my name is Rachel Jacoby, and I'm very happy to be here today. I'm going to speak about the approach of cloud computing from the perspective of the Banking Supervision Department, the BSD. So some years ago, you know that we at the BSD, Banking Supervision Department, we recognize the benefits and the advantages of cloud computing technology. For example, to increase the competition between banks. For example, to reduce costs. Another example, to improve the services. Oh, I'm going to solve all of it.
Can I move this?
Okay, like this? But then I'm stick to... Okay.
You want to review this mic?
Okay, maybe, yes.
Can you guys wait a second?
So,
Sorry, we only
but
have
don't,
one mic like this.
don't take it into account. I mean, the 8 minutes. your
Yeah,
time.
no, we'll make sure that you have enough time.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you give it a test?
Okay. I don't believe it. Do you hear me? No. I'm not
No.
sure. Okay. Is it okay?
Can you speak louder? No worries.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
now
it's
it's
better
working.
now. Okay, thank you. So some years ago, we at the BSD, we recognized the advantages of using the cloud computing technology. For example, as I said, to increase the competition between banks, to improve the services to the bank's customers, especially in the digital era, also to reduce costs and even to improve the environment, the green environment. However, notwithstanding the advantages of this technology, the cloud computing, you know, that exposed at that time, we realized that it exposed the banks to risks. Some of the risks were already known as traditional outsourcing risk, but with a higher severity. Some of them were specific, unique to that technology, to the cloud computing technology. At that time, the use of cloud computing, of public cloud computing, was not common. When we examined the banks in the world or financial institutions, we realized that most of them, especially in the SaaS model, they use private cloud and not public cloud. In addition, we realized that some of the protection tools, the measures and the controls were not mature enough to deal with the risk of cloud computing technology. Even the banks, neither the banks nor us, had at that time enough experience. So let's admit it. So taking in account all these facts, all these aspects, and recognizing the advantages of cloud computing, the supervisor of banks in 2015 decided to enable the banks to use public cloud computing and even to let them store sensitive data on public clouds. But he acted cautiously, we acted cautiously, we acted gradually. So we decided that because of the aspects I've just mentioned, we are going to require the banks to apply for a permit for every use of the cloud computing. It's not good?
I want to check.
I'll raise my voice. So to apply to us, to the BSD, for a permit for each use, again, because there was no experience, because the use of public cloud was very limited at that time. So, and of course, we prohibited the use of core systems on the cloud. So, looking what happened during the 2 years since the supervisor issued a letter dealing with the risk management in a cloud computing environment. During the 2 years since this letter was issued, we gave 37 permits to the banks. 37 permits, if we look at the users of the application, so most of them were low-risk applications like marketing, like analytics, informational internet sites. Few banks used or took a more complicated application system and put them and transfer them to the cloud, like CRM, like HR portal. And there has been until today few banks which haven't started yet to use this technology. So in parallel, we decided to re-examine the extent of use of cloud computing, to consult with the cloud experts, to look at other regulatory authorities, and then we had in mind, after 2 years since that letter of the supervisor was issued, we realized that maybe we can exempt the banks from applying to us for every use. Why? We saw that most of the users were low risk, and we really gained, we and the banks gained at that time some experience. So after 2 years, last July 2017, we issued a directive, not a letter, a PCBB, which means proper conduct of banking business directive dealing with cloud computing. I mean, like the letter, this directive sets out the provision regarding corporate government, risk management, etc. But the banks are not required to apply for a permit unless 4 conditions are present. For example, just to give you the insight, sensitive information is stored on the cloud, or the data which is on the cloud can be used to harm by a potential attacker, to harm the banks, to harm its customers. And there are more 2 conditions which you can see on the screen. So we really saw that after we changed and we were sure that we could facilitate the banks, we saw that we just since July 2017 we gave just 5 permits to the banks. So I must tell you that we go on examining this issue because, as I told you, we believe the value of cloud computing, but on the other end, we think that this could be, the cloud computing, even a business enabler for the banks, as long as they manage the risk, the relevant risk, adequately, appropriately, and continuously. Meant that if they really know how to mitigate the various risks which are in that technology, of course they can use this technology to be more advanced, to be more innovative. So we go on examining this directive even nowadays, but I must emphasize something. If you look at the last column, you can see that there is one provision in our directive which, according to it, our supervisor of banks can exempt a bank from specific provision. What does it mean? It means, for example, a new digital bank which plans to establish its IT systems or core systems on the cloud, under certain conditions, it really be exempted from our directive. It could do it. So this is really, I think, something really new, something very innovative, that in the future, let's hope that a digital bank will be established in Israel. I guess it will be able, in certain conditions, of course, to have its application on a public cloud. So if I summarize my brief presentation, we at the Banking Supervision Department, we believe that the cloud computing technology is a business enabler. A technology, why? Because it can help the banks to compete not just with other banks, but also with the fintech. It can, of course, help the banks to be innovative, to be advanced, to be timely manner, to be flexible, and of course, to improve the services to its customers as long as the banks manage their risk adequately. This is our vision or our approach. Thank you very much.